Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Law and Finance Show, and today I have another great guest on. Now, the reason why I'm excited about this guest, well, there are a couple of reasons. One of them is, being a CEO of a law firm, it's not a job that most people probably go to school to study. So there's a lot of things you learn in the way of becoming the CEO of a firm as opposed to just practicing law. And also, this guest is an amazing podcaster. I came across her podcast on LinkedIn. She's doing amazing things there. And she has been so gracious to work through the massive time zone differences as she's in Japan, but she will be on. So stay tuned for this amazing episode. So without further ado, let me bring on my amazing guest, Catherine O'Connell. Welcome to the show, Catherine.
Hey, Terrell, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here finally after we've got ourselves sorted on the time zones and we're here on air. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is a pleasure. I have been looking forward to our conversation because it's always a pleasure to have other podcasters on. And one of the things that really intrigued me was the area of focus of your firm of supporting that in-house counsel. Because I will say is as a finance person, I remember when I was working for some corporations, we were trying to navigate some contracts and we are trying to navigate some M&A activity. I ended up spending a lot of time with our in-house counsel just to make sure we weren't getting ourselves into trouble. So
that's a good thing. And always doing it at the front end of your project or assignment rather than at the end when you're scrambling is always a good idea, right? Us previous and current in-house lawyers say, get us on first, and then we'll help you at the beginning, and then we can help you along the way. So yeah, good tip.
I love it. I love it. So we're definitely going to hop into that. But before we do, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Oh, yes. It's quite a lengthy one, but I'll try and keep it short for you, Terrell. I'm originally from New Zealand, as you may be able to tell from my accent, and law is actually my second career. First up, I was in tourism, and I was a tour guide for Japanese people who were coming to New Zealand to see the beautiful place that it is. And I used to take Japanese tourists around New Zealand and show them everything. And I left tourism then to go and actually do law. And a lot of people ask me why. And it's a really good story because you find out a lot of things from your clients that help you along your way. And so when I was a tour guide, I got lots of questions about the law. How's the law? How do you progress law within New Zealand? How do they make laws? What do lawyers do? And so that got me interested. I went away and researched a lot about the law. And then I started bringing that into my conversations with the tourists. And so as I studied the law, I got to really like it. So I decided to leave tourism and actually go to university and do law. So I did law in Japanese, and I came out as a kind of Japanese-speaking person who could do law. And a law firm hired me. It was actually quite niche or niche, as you guys say, I think, in the States. And I was sort of a value offering for them that I could be a Japanese-speaking lawyer, could help Japanese investment because it was right on the upturn right then. So that's what I did. And after 7 years of doing that, I came on over to Japan because an offer came up to work for Olympus Corporation. You know them, they make cameras and they make endoscopes and great stuff like that. So I worked with them for a year. And so it was only a 1-year contract, but now I'm here 20 years later, stayed here and did lots of other things here. So should I continue and just tell you a little bit more about those things?
Well, yeah. And before you jump into that, one question I have is, when you went to law school, I guess, at what point did you actually learn Japanese?
Oh, so I learned Japanese. Good question. I learned Japanese after I left school. I didn't really think I wanted to go straight up to university. And New Zealand's really great in that we can do anything at any time in our life. So at 50 or 60, you can go back to university. So what I did was take my path to a practical, what do you call it, like a polytechnic, a trade school. And I went there and found this sort of tourism diploma that you could do with Japanese, and also travel agency work. So I did that. And I loved Japanese. So I did it full time for 2 years. And just the real game changer, it changed my life because it's led to everything else from there. So Japanese first, then law second.
Okay, because I was gonna say, because and when I was listening to the story, I'm like, did she
Yeah,
learn
because you just
Japanese
don't go to
in law
sleep
school?
yeah, you don't go to sleep and wake up speaking Japanese, do you? So it wasn't a movement, and a lot of people think, "Oh, I'll just learn Japanese really, quick," but it was really, a deep dive into it for, full time, and I think
Mhm.
because when you learn it very early, like any foreign language, it really sticks with you, and that's why little kids who learn in bilingual families can pick up English in another language really, really super fast, and it stays with them. So yeah, I wasn't too old when I studied Japanese, just out of school. So yeah, it was a magical turnaround for me to be able to do that. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so now when we fast forward that you took the job for 1 year in Japan, and then so how did the story unfold after that?
Yeah. So after 1 year here, I realized that it really wasn't enough, and I liked it. I mean, I could have gone back to New Zealand and continued on the associate to partner path in the firm, but things were opening up here for me, and I just thought it was a good opportunity to do some more. So I took up another in-house legal counsel position with Panasonic Corporation, and then after 4 years with them, Hogan Lovells law firm invited me back to come in to the firm, which often people say is on the dark side. But the reason they asked me back was to go into a hybrid role where I could go on secondment to a Japanese company and work in their in-house legal team. So I did that, and that was Mitsubishi Motors Corporation. And I loved that, right? And during that time, I studied the UK bar, the England and Wales bar. And that led to being able to actually go to the Hogan Lovells London office for another secondment there. So it was just magical how everything sort of stacks up. And I think this is how I've lived my life, is more one thing leads to another rather than doing a 5-year plan or something like that. So after Hogan Lovells, I came back from London. I stayed for a little while in Tokyo office, and then an offer came up from a headhunter to establish a legal department in a subsidiary of a US company, actually. And so I said, right, I'm in for that. And went and set up that legal department from zero, just built all the policies and rules and things. That had a kind of a fraud incident had happened in the company, and they had no legal department and decided it
Oh,
might be
wow.
prudent to have one. Yeah, it's all out there. I'm not telling any stories. And so it was really interesting to start something from zero and build it. And then I let that go and started my own law practice, Catherine O'Connell Law, in April 2018. And the rest is what we might be getting into in a little bit. Yeah.
Wow, that is quite the amazing timeline of just, the different opportunities, the different
Mm,
experiences. And, one thing that pops out to me that I'm very curious on is, you know, when here in the US, when it comes down to practicing law, it's very for the most part, it's very state specific.
yes.
So how is it for you of, traveling through so many different countries and practicing law and so on? Did you find a lot of uniqueness about the way law was practiced in different countries?
I can remember the first day starting in as an in-house counsel at Olympus in Japan, and I remember the first few days. The lawyer who was there said, "Just stop being a law firm lawyer. You have to be different when you're in-house." And it never ever struck me, but advising on the law and not thinking about the business. But I thank him for that advice to do things differently, right? Become a business lawyer. So that was one huge change between what I'd been used to in New Zealand to Japan. And in Japan, most Japanese lawyers will advise on Japanese law. Foreign lawyers are registered here with the Ministry of Justice. And so we have to provide advice in our home jurisdiction. So I don't provide advice on Japanese law. I know a lot of Japanese lawyers in my team, my sort of broader network, who I send work to, and we would collaborate on matters that have got English and Japanese law. combined. But yeah, the differences are basically, I come from a common law country, and Japan is civil law. So it's absolutely different. So there's no way I'm going to know all of the Japanese law. But through those in-house legal counsel jobs, I've come to see differences in the law. And so, and the way of approach to things as well. If you go to contracting, Japanese contracts tend to be only 2 or 3 pages of very broad, high level terms and conditions. But, the usual American style, for example, state law, right? It's all very, very complicated and bold text. You have capital letters. Japan doesn't have that. So there's lots of those kinds of little differences that you pick up along the way. And it certainly does exist. You've just got to maneuver them. There may be ways. Hiring you as an in-house legal counsel from your own jurisdiction in Japan means they want you to help them, and they're inviting you to give some of your inspiration and knowledge of foreign laws to help them strengthen their business, especially if they're doing international business. But there are other times where you need to also fall in line with how things are done here.
Mhm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And something that you mentioned that I want to talk a little bit more about is because you provide that support for that in-house legal support, and you mentioned about the
Yeah.
advice that you got of, hey, stop being a law firm lawyer. And how was it, or what are some of the other differences that you see from practicing law as a part of a law firm versus in-house counsel?
Oh, I mean, it's like black and white, really, because you just have to be able to sink yourself into the business and know the business very, very well. And this has been said by many, many an in-house lawyer. And I think that's the difference that I now provide when I'm providing my law firm umbrella legal advice to the businesses I work with, because I know I've been on their side that they are on, right? I know what it's like to be a general counsel running a legal department, or a lawyer inside a business who's just by themselves and is overworked. And I know what's crossing their minds with budget and with delivery times and things like that. And so I think in that way, I'm understanding of how they do the law differently, right? They've got to be always thinking about the different stakeholders within the business, the people in the finance team, the people in a supply chain, the people in procurement, sales team, and knowing how to serve them best. Right. And in a law firm, you've just got your one client, not your one client, you've got lots of clients. So you're looking after different clients. In-house, you've got one client, the company, but different people within that. So treating them not like a family, but like a community, and how you would look after your community and serve them well, pulling out weeds over here, planting flowers over there, putting out fires, helping to prevent fires. So that's kind of what you do as an in-house legal counsel. I think it's completely different to law firm work. We're also in law firms thinking about time and time recording. And I'm not saying in-house you don't do that. You're very conscious of how you spend your time, but you're not necessarily recording it. Some in-house counsel do, but I never found I did that. But you become, I guess, more conscious of time if you're in a law firm than you are perhaps if in-house counsel.
And I find it very interesting, or when I talk to so many different lawyers, and even talking to you now, it's like the amount of similarities between the practice and just the matriculation of a legal career and a career in accounting. Because I was telling someone before, I was like, when you're in public accounting, a lot of the same stuff you said.
Mm.
You're there kind of advising on the technical side of accounting, but you're not really actually helping them move the business forward.
Mm.
And you're not really being part of the solution or the execution of the solution. So for yourself, as you kind of made that transition, did you initially know that once you started doing in-house support, that did you come to a conclusion and say, hey, what, this is the right angle of law for me to be in? Or were you
Oh,
still kind of
absolutely.
undecided?
No, totally. The thing is, you never know how something's going to be until you do it. And I think lawyers are often just waiting for the perfect timing to do their own business or to do something new and to launch. But the only way you learn is by doing. And although I didn't have all of my ducks lined up, I had pretty much most of them. So I knew
Mhm.
that I could launch a business with the network I had in place, the market research I'd done, and just sort of be able to start. And so you can't know everything, but you've got to take those opportunities. And so, yes, I did the research. I asked my general counsel and law firm lawyers, as well as in-house legal counsel, would you be interested in? Would it solve a problem for you if you had someone who could come in and just flexibly work for you 3 hours a week, twice a week, or for a certain period of time? Would that be suitable or useful in the market? And the resounding responses were yes. So it was how to do it. So I've learned as I've gone along, but I'd never regret taking this step to do something that's pioneering and unique in the Japanese market here, legal market. And I love it because I'm working with different companies, being an in-house lawyer for them, an outside general counsel, but I'm not that. I am a law firm. So I've got the best of both worlds, I believe. And I just thoroughly love it. So I'd never retract. At the time I did it, yeah, it took a bit of risk, but I had to back myself. And I think that's what we have to do. And that's quite hard for lawyers to take a risk in that way. And advising on risk for clients is one thing, taking it on yourself is another. But it's proven to be a really good thing to do, especially this fractional outside general counsel services market is still very, very tiny in Japan. In fact, I could almost be the only one. So I'm just filling a gap and really proud of myself. I can say that I've come up with a solution from a problem that I experienced when I was running that law department. As I said to you before, staff member disappeared and I had to do it all myself. And it was then from that problem I had personally, how do I find a part-time solution to come in and help me? I found that solution in myself. So I'm kind of the person I wanted to be in my team back then. Yeah. So that's often where, that opportunity comes from what we experience as a negative or a problem in our own business lives.
Awesome. And you mentioned about, just kind of pioneering a new approach to law. Do you often find that when you're talking to prospective clients or you're talking to other people that you spend some time having to educate them on, hey, how you play a role for your clients?
Yeah, I think that did happen at the very beginning. Now I've got my, shall we say, elevator pitch really well set out. And I always finish an assignment with clients by sending them a testimonial request. And I ask specific questions that will bring back from them a description of the benefits I provide for them. And I tucked one aside for you in case you were interested in that. But yes, I just find that now I'm able to say and speak their language, because often I'm talking to regional general counsel, or I'm speaking with a general counsel who's in the United States, for example. They've got business operations in Japan, but no legal person on the ground here. Even, you'd be surprised, some big companies, and I won't name them, but the big companies often do not have a lawyer ensconced in the business. So they do need that help. And I just speak in their terms. And I think that's really important. If you're talking with general counsel, outside counsel, as an outside counsel, you should be speaking in the way that sings to them, the things that they are thinking about, the budget, how can they oversee a business operations from America to Japan? How do they need the help on the ground? So I speak in their terms. And then that seems to be the thing that works very, very well. You can see it on people's faces when they've heard something they understand.
Awesome. I love it. Now, one of the questions I was going to ask is, about some of the feedback
Mm,
or testimonials that you've
yeah.
heard. So when people, your clients, and they talk about, hey, here's the value that we got from working with Catherine, like, what are some of the things that they're saying?
All right, I'm ready for this. So one said to me, it was really awesome, and I've got it just here so I can prompt myself, but I love the flexibility of the hours that you provide within the framework of the monthly retainer. It caters for the peaks and the troughs in the business, their business, right? And you're closer to a business than a traditional law firm. And that is really a key point. And this person also said you fill the gap between traditional law firms and hiring in-house for small and medium-sized companies that don't really require full-time counsel in Japan because the workload's not right there. You can provide that as a dedicated lawyer with relevant skills and experience to handle the bulk of the in-house counsel, contracting, and ad hoc legal advice. So, she's also said on this one, which is quite interesting, traditional law firms are typically reluctant to provide a dedicated lawyer to one's organization unless it's a big, large fee-paying client. So my firm also fills that gap. I think that's kind of key because often big law firms won't release an associate to go on a secondment to an in-house legal team or a business because it takes them off the big deal, right? So I'm coming in at a different level and approachability. So I think that particular one testimonial sort of covers what I use when I'm talking to potential clients. And I think that's really interesting for any lawyers out there who are looking to think about how they go out and find business, is asking the testimonial that will give you the things that you can use in order to market or talk to your clients in a way that speaks to them.
Awesome. That's one of the things that I have found, myself as we've looked at different fractional models, that as business and the landscape of business is changing all around the world, that the fractional model seems to be giving a lot of businesses that flexibility that they need. Because as you said, they may not have the amount of work to hire a big firm full time, but they're like, hey, we do need support. We just don't need that much support. So it's amazing to hear the testimonies that you're getting.
Yeah, it's really, that's one I use a lot because it just really covers everything. I almost couldn't have written it myself because I didn't, but this person particularly fantastic, still working with them and have been since 2018 and just providing the regular support for them. And I just really, that's how I love to deliver for everybody. Because not everyone can hire a full-time legal counsel, right? And even, as I said, some of the big end of town find it hard as well. So it really delivers to me a personal feeling of satisfaction and joy that I can help people in the way that I remember I was struggling, back in 2016 when I had that issue myself.
Mhm. Awesome. So, another thing that I wanted to make sure we talked about is your podcast. So, can you tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Oh, yes. Have you got time? Yeah. So my podcast is called Lawyer on Air. And, it's one of the most wonderful things I do. That's a joyful passion project of mine. I never realized anything about podcasting before I started. I was nervous to do it. But again, like before, just start and you will figure out how to do it. And so that's what I do. I have this podcast. I launch usually 2 guests a month. And they are women lawyers who are working in Japan. And I think the stories of women lawyers are often not told. And especially in Japan, you just don't get to hear the stories of their careers, how they got here, how they've gone up the ranks, what sorts of things really matter to them in their business, the best advice, worst advice they've received, those sorts of things. So there's really, I think, Terrell, 2 kinds of podcasts. One like this, where we're talking and conversational. Another one might be technical, where you give out tips and advice and it finishes, 20, 30 minutes. Yours is around 30, but it's really good conversation. Mine are around an hour. So if people are listening in, they'll need to sort of be on a commute or out walking with the dog and put their earphones in and listen, because it is a lengthy conversation. And we do go through quite deeply how people have transitioned, say, from working as a lawyer in the United States, coming to Japan, and how they found their house, how they managed to do the differences between, working in the States and Japan, and how they've really living their lives here. I try to make it quite fun. At the beginning, I asked people what we would be doing if we were meeting up in person, which bar we would go to and what we would be drinking. The reason is it's kind of like a virtual wine bar where we're meeting. And that's the scene I wanted to set, as we were sitting down after a long day at work going, wow, how's your work been today? What are you, working on? What's troubling you? What inspires you? What's around the corner? What's the future of law looking like? What's tech like? Just that kind of situation. So I love it. And hopefully we can put it in the show notes, the link. It's really, as I say, a passion project. I'm the first lawyer to podcast in Japan. And that's another first, which, I didn't really think about and set about to do once I started, but I encourage other lawyers to do it as well. It's just such a great way of getting your thoughts in line, expressing your voice, and sharing other people's stories. It's not about me, it's about sharing them. And there's so much wisdom that is not heard yet. And that's my platform, is to share people's wisdom. And that's coming from women lawyers in Japan.
Awesome. And I know that there's probably such a tremendous need for it, because I remember when I was working in corporate America and I took a job down in Brazil, and I was like, if I had the opportunity to hear someone talk about, how they transition into life into Brazil, that would have been amazing. So I'm pretty sure that the lawyers who listen to your podcast that are moving to Japan, to where it's just like, man, these are
Yes.
helpful tips that I probably would have found out the hard way had I not listened to the podcast.
Well, we're lucky now to have so many podcasts. And I must mention too, I've interviewed 2 top managing partners in large law firms. One's a US firm, Morrison Foerster, and because 48% of my listeners identify as male, and so I thought it was about time to get a couple of guys on the podcast. And so they talk about what they're looking at when they're hiring male and female or other gender attorneys into the firm, hard skills and soft skills. So that kind of episode, I think, would be really appealing to a broad range of people. So yeah, I'm having fun. It takes time, but I love it, and I don't want to give it up. So it's addictive, as you know.
Absolutely. So, how can people find you online and find the posts that you share about the podcast?
Yeah, so I'm mostly active on LinkedIn and on Instagram. So I think if they, that's it. Great. Thanks so much. My LinkedIn page is right there. You can find me there. And also I'm on Instagram at Lawyer on Air. It's very easy to find me there. So I usually post, I do post every day, one or two times a day. And the podcast is out there every week. And so you'll see something out there. I'm also doing another co-hosting of another podcast. So you'll see in between, one podcast will be Lawyer on Air, the other one will be the New Zealand business focused one. So, there's an event, Sizzle at Sundown, that's Women in Law Japan doing an event shortly. Our first in-person event for 30 months. And so I love sharing other people's stories. You'll see there, Lisa Lang was on that scroll as you went through. She's on the front page of a law magazine. How amazing. And so I love sharing other people's books and things they're up to. So you'll see a lot there beyond me. As I say, sharing is my not middle name, but I love doing it.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, before we wrap up, one final question that I love asking every guest that comes on is, when you think about your career and where you've been, you think about where you are now, and even the businesses that you supported, what is 2 pieces of advice that you would share with those that are practicing law, trying to develop their own firm?
Right. Okay. 2 things would be: get yourself a CPA, right? You're going to believe that too. And the second is building your personal board of directors. So if I can explain a little bit on that. When you're in the business, you're not only a lawyer, right? You're not a lawyer anymore. You're a founder and a small business owner. And so going from monthly paycheck into paying taxes and dealing with all of those kinds of things is hard. And spending your own time doing that is actually not a good use of your time. So knowing when to let go of something such as that is really important. And I sort of put that between the buy and the build, right? Things you can build, such as I said before, how you sell your services to someone, compared to buying. So it's better to go out and buy, as it were, build and buy tension there, or paradox, and make friends with a CPA. So I hired my accountant from the get-go straight away, and she does all of my taxes. She's also there as someone to call on anytime I need. So I think that was a really key thing for me, was to put in an accountant from the beginning. Second thing is this personal board of directors, which we often hear about. Those people that you can have around you. Often we are not co-founders, we are just by ourselves. So we need someone who's kind of like a sponsor, a friend, and a mentor, but it can also hit us with those hard hitting conversations when we need it as well. And often for me, it's a group of fellow entrepreneurs, it's other women lawyers and friends, it's male lawyer friends, it's male non-lawyer friends. It's women who are on boards, outside boards, like myself. I'm on an external board, 2 of them. It's a couple of Japanese lawyers who help me with Japanese law advice for myself. So having that kind of group, I'll add in there my executive coach who I've had from the very beginning of starting my business as well. So that personal board of directors is vital. So I would say that, and having the CPA, who's probably almost on that board as well, would be my key to surviving and thriving as a small business owner who is a lawyer.
Awesome. I love it. And for all of those that are watching and listening, I did not pay Catherine to say that about the CPA.
We need you. We definitely need you. Lawyers cannot do math, I'll tell you. Yeah.
Well, Catherine, it has been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for being an amazing guest.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope this is some inspiration for your listeners. Thanks.
You just checked out the Law and Finance Show, where we bring you great, insightful interviews that talk about the business and the financial side of managing a law firm. So subscribe to the show and check out more of the great interviews.